Hey folks, this is Tommy and welcome to another video on AI in Games Plus. In my recent video on my main channel, I dived into the inner workings of the AI for The Last of Us Part 2. One of the most fascinating elements of the sequel is the ambient AI system that was designed to support ally characters when they're not in combat. This is a comprehensive revision of how characters move, where they move, and how they communicate their thought processes during the quieter moments of the game. And this is all largely to address the ever-widening gap between the AI-controlled non-player characters and the performance capture we see in cutscenes and the like by the same characters. So in this video, join me as I go on a short walkthrough of a key scene in The Last of Us Part 2, one which developers Naughty Dog used themselves to test this system during development, the museum flashback sequence at the end of Chapter 2. Naturally, spoiler warning if you haven't seen this short segment of the game, and with that, Other Tommy, the floor is yours. Thanks, Other Tommy, you magnificent human being that you are, and welcome. We're now here in The Last of Us Part 2 in the museum sequence. So, just to kind of give you a little bit of insight, if you haven't played this already, this is a flashback sequence that takes place a few hours into the game, in which Joel has taken Ellie to the Wyoming Museum of Science and History. And it's meant to be, it's a birthday gift for her. And it's kind of an important moment in the, reaffirming the relationship between these two characters. And as you can see, Joel's already kind of busy just doing his thing right now. And for those of you who've played the game, you'll know this, that I've kind of fast forwarded a little bit through this chapter. There's an opening sequence in which they're climbing through a lot of countryside in order to get here. But critically, where this kicks in, or what our interest is rather, is really when we actually get into the museum sequence. So what we're really interested in for the purposes of this video is Joel. We want to just kind of see what Joel's doing. And as you can see, so I've had Ellie just standing around, just doing nothing while I was preparing this recording. And Joel already, it seems, is out and about and doing stuff. He seems to be having a little look around. Now, the reason for this demo, or the reason why we're doing this video, is really just to communicate the ambient AI system that we discussed in episode 70 of AI in Games. There is an AI toolchain that is running under the hood that is essentially there to facilitate Joel as part of his delivery in the story, and to make sure that you, the player, feel like Joel is an actual living, breathing human being, and is actually being reflective of the motion capture performances and the voice acting that we see for that character. Now, a lot of Joel up to this point in this chapter is entirely scripted, with a little bit of following and leading behaviour as we get up to the museum. But critically, we actually passed by an invisible trigger right here at the door, which actually triggers an animation where Joel opens the door, lets Ellie in, and also allows you to pick up the last and final pamphlet that's sitting here at the entrance. And I've just been standing around waiting to start this video, and it's interesting to see already that Joel's been out and about doing his thing. Now, Joel is actually designed to look like he is active and busy and, just acting as a human being would when you're standing around waiting for a professional idiot on YouTube to start making a video. So he's having a look around the environment, and he's maybe wandering around and interacting with stuff directly. And as we discussed in the main AI in Games video, there's a number of systems and processes going on under the hood, but I wanted to show how this all actually runs when you're here in the museum sequence, because, as detailed in my video, this is one of the levels that Naughty Dog themselves used in order to test this system during development. And so for Ellie, we actually have the ability to interact with several points in the world, because we have the pamphlet, and during that we're then able to maybe comment or react to some of the dinosaur skeletons that we see lying around, and some of the other samples as well. Now, Joel's going to interact with us in some of this, but outside of that, you're going to see Joel is just out and about doing his own thing. So, without further ado, let's get into it. We're going to start, I think, by coming over here and having a look at this particular dinosaur that's been set up.
Oh, look at those talons.
We'll see now.
Is a velociraptor.
Joel comes over, and it's a cat. This is a pre-built interaction. This is a pre-built sequence in which these two characters are having a dialogue, but Joel moves into proximity so that animation can play. Also, quite enjoy the Jurassic Park reference there. So you're going to see this happen a lot. When Ellie decides to go and interact with something, Joel is going to come over and say his piece, because often it's an interaction between the two of them. but you'll also see him just going around and doing different stuff. So here, he's actually just standing and looking at the thing that we were just discussing. The Deinonychus dinosaur. It's not a Velociraptor, it's a Deinonychus. But he's also kind of taking a moment and looking around. Now, when he's looking at the dinosaur, that is one of the positional action packs that exists that allows for him to essentially look in a general area of the map without having to directly interact with an object. We saw him, however, do this before. In fact, he might even contemplate doing it again when he started interacting directly with the counter. Now that is a cinematic action pack, or cap, and we talked about this in the video. These existed in the first game as well, in which it's a particular point in the world in which Joel is going to interact specifically with it. I couldn't have anticipated that any better. Thank you so much, Joel's AI. This was absolutely wonderful. So this is an animation that is directly attached to a location in the world because he's interacting with that surface. Notice how his hand actually slightly went through the surface there as he did it, because it's an animation that he's playing and it's just designed to line up with it. Now, he's then going to subsequently do a lot of other wandering and looking behaviours, and we're seeing him do this quite a lot, even before we actually get into the museum, where here he's just looking around at what's going on around him. He's just admiring the space around us in this kind of dilapidated museum, and then he starts wandering around to find other things to look at. And as discussed in the main video, there's an entire system that's allowing him to do that, and we're going to see so much more of this when we move into the main area. So with that, so I'm going to start moving, but you'll notice as I begin to head away, Joel's eventually going to clock to the fact that I'm leaving him, and then he's going to follow along and keep up with me. There we go. So he's always kind of tethered to me. He's always paying attention to what Ellie is doing, but then when Ellie isn't that active, he needs to find ways to look busy and, you know, amuse himself, because he's meant to be an individual, he's meant to be a human being. And again, he's noticed I'm not moving around much, and so he's went back to this behaviour. He's just checking out the Compsognathus, and yeah, we should probably push on and get into the main area. So here we go into the main part of the museum. And it's at this point I think it gets really interesting, because I have the opportunity to interact with so many different objects in this space. A lot of these exhibits, there are interactions, and in fact, let's just trigger one right now with the Triceratops.
Triceratops means three-horned face.
You would not want to be on the business end of that horn.
Notice how he just came out of the frame of the camera there. He just pushed in order to trigger that interaction. Now, the thing is, I couldn't actually tell you where he was a second ago. Was he directly behind me, or did the game just deliberately say, okay, you now need to push him in, because he isn't in my frame of view, and we bring him over? I actually couldn't tell you. It's not something that was made clear to me from the research that I did. But he's going to now just amuse himself. And every now and then, I'm going to look at something, and if I interact with one of the exhibits, he's then going to come over and say his piece. But until then, he's just going to enjoy having a look around. So to facilitate all this, the designers have essentially put dozens of these action points, these action packs that allow Joel to kind of interact with the world. Now, the cinematic action packs, which are at specific points with relating to specific objects, those will be placed quite specifically by designers in key locations, because he's going to interact with things like the desk that we saw a minute ago. That's a great example of it. But also the positional action packs, these are actually littered all around the ground as well. And as we discussed in the main video, they actually are able to then, through tools, they're able to then, like tools that they generate themselves, they're able to then have it, that this entire area is laced with interaction points for Joel to check out. And so he's going to do a multitude of different things. Like here, he's actually acknowledging the Stegosaurus and he comments on it. So he's actually turning to look at the Stegosaurus, says his little piece about it, and then he's probably going to move on. And he did it right now. And if you actually catch it, you can see the animation change from one to the other sometimes. But now, before he decides... Now, this is critical, actually. I was going to say before he decides, but that's not true. Joel already knows where he's going next. But what he does is they deliberately inject a middle ground. As he's going to his next location, he often has a stop and wander. These wander posts that we talk about, where he kind of just has a little look around and he's like, I don't know what's going on around here. What's the next thing I should pay attention to? And then he's going to actually start paying more specific attention to a particular object. Now, even as I move around, he's going to be left to his own devices. He's going to do his own thing. But, like I said, he's tethered to me as the player. So if Ellie begins to move a certain distance away, I don't think that's him actually following me right now, because I'm still in this area. I think I've got a little bit more free range, but now I think he's actually kind of trying to stay within my proximity. There we go. Notice how he occasionally stops and then he occasionally moves again. Now, if I was to pick something else to interact with, let's say this one here, the Gallimimus, I think it is.
Gallimimus's name means chicken mimic.
Where did he go? There he is.
Well, they're dumb.
So he's always making sure he's around for these key moments when we have these interactions between Joel and Ellie, but outside of that, he's kind of allowed to go around and do his own thing, provided that the distance between the two characters isn't too strong. Now, one of the things we did talk about in the video, and I'm going to deliberately just walk over here for a second, and just have a look in this general direction.
There's a 50-cent word.
I'm going to stand over here, and I'm just going to look in this direction. And what I'm keen to see, maybe not directly, maybe not straight away, but even if we actually have a little look around, Joel's going to kind of stay within our proximity. Now, one of the things we talked about in the main video is that when Joel is using a lot of these action packs that trigger the animations, the system that is actually governing all this is critically evaluating every possible interaction point that Joel can use. And what it really likes to do is it likes to find ones that will essentially highlight that the system is in operation. Now, I've deliberately picked looking towards the water fountains and the restroom because I didn't think that's a particularly interesting area. But I'm interested to see right now where Joel is. Where did he go? He's right behind me. And that's kind of funny. So, when this system is in operation, what it's trying to do is it's always trying to find locations that are close to the player. And critically, it's really interested in trying to find locations that will enable for the player to observe what Joel is doing. And so, and critically, it'll either find something that's right next to me, or it will try and find something that will force Joel to cross my line of sight. And so here we go, Joel has now actually moved directly in front of me, and he's continuing to interact with all these objects around him, or he's looking at these objects around him. And this is a really good way to, one point to actually try this out in, because he's critically looking around at the skulls that are in front of me, because I know there's many points of interest for him to exhibit, but critically there's also other stuff that's over there. He's still kind of in my field of view, and he's maybe going to deviate off of it, but it's okay because he did cross my field of view originally, and that then tells us what he's up to. It's like, hey, we've already communicated to the player that Joel is actually looking at and evaluating all these points in the space, deciding which ones to move to, and then heading off and doing it. And because we saw him do it, it's great. It highlights to us that Joel is an active, intelligent creature, human being in this space, and that he's looking at all this interesting stuff. Much like you would do if you were a real person hanging out in a museum like this. So yep, he's kind of enjoying himself. He's having a good time. And then he's going to pivot, he's going to turn, he's going to have a look around and decide where he wants to go next. But critically, of course, all I got to do is get far enough away, and he's going to change his mind and come running back. And so, it's worth pointing out, particularly at this stage, if you look at the actual space. Now, the museum is actually a really great example of a lot of the kind of secret level design rules that are happening in the construction of a lot of The Last of Us Part 2, in that there is a deliberate effort to ensure that there is sufficient space for the two characters to move around in. Notice how we've never really got too close to each other. And I do get close enough and he has room to back off. And so this is something that I know that the team at Naughty Dog were quite focused on, was ensuring that whatever physical space they created, there was enough room for two characters to move around, because the idea should be that Joel isn't constantly at Ellie's hip, and subsequently he's allowed to move around and potentially, pass by behind me, or, even get right up in front of me, and it's okay for him to do that. We're not going to bump into each other. And that's something you have to consider in a level design perspective, is does this space enable for the characters to steer around this environment more effectively? So if we pop in, he's there and it's fine, But of course, it's important that he comes over here because we're going to eventually trigger the interaction that we need. He has to be there in order to appear in the mirror. All right.
You want to try it on?
I do not.
Your loss.
One last thing to talk about, which I haven't really mentioned much of, is you'll notice that the animations, particularly for Joel, and this is something that exhibited for all the characters, we talk about this in the main episode, in that look at his rate of motion. So he's got these slightly more sped up animations for when he has to dodge out the way. But if I'm to leave him alone, oh, there we go, he's messing around with the desk again. Critically, one of the funny things about this is there is an emphasis on ensuring that the character doesn't interact with the same action packs too frequently, but then it's been 5 minutes, or probably more than that in the context of this video, so he's back interacting with it again. It's going to take a little while before he tries to do it again. But if we watch him just now, a lot of his movement is much more relaxed when he eventually moves. Come on, Joel, help me out, buddy. There we go. Much more relaxed walk cycle. Even when he's having a look around and he's admiring a lot of the exhibits, he does so with his animation being generally more chill. That's a much more normal walk, for example, compared to a lot of the other times where characters are walking and running around in The Last of Us, given it's typically with an emphasis on speed and urgency because there's infected trying to kill you, or, you know, human hunters who are trying to do something even worse. But here, you can tell from the body language of Joel that he's much more relaxed. Now, that's not an AI thing in any way, shape, or form. That is entirely due to how the animators work. Even here, you'll notice, even with Ellie's animation and subsequently Joel's, come on, buddy, he's going to realize it. He's jogging along, he's fast walking, but he's not really in a hurry. It's not like there's a sense of urgency to the motion and the movement that they're doing. All right. Let's head on upstairs.
Did you go to museums a lot?
Yeah. Yeah, Sarah loved them. I swear that girl dragged me to every damn museum in Texas.
Oh, he needs to hurry up because he knows there's a key interaction point about to happen. Now, this camera's fixed, so I had no ability to
Looks like a giraffe.
force Joel or even know where Joel was before we did it.
Hey!
I see the appeal.
Told you.
So yeah, the whole point of this video really is just to communicate there's a huge amount of effort just being made to ensure that Joel, as he is interacting with the space around you, while you are interacting with this space, that Joel looks like an actual human being and that he is intrigued and curious about this area and he's exploring this area in much the same way that you are as Ellie during this sequence. So he knew a little bit of what was already here because, spoiler alert, he's already been here. He knew what this place was because that's what the whole point of this birthday treat is. But he's finding ways in which to relax and embody and actually, you know, touch and interact with this space. And it's quite funny and it's kind of interesting and it humanizes his character in a way that you don't really see outside of this kind of moment, I would say, in the rest of this series. So it's quite an exciting and fun thing to do, and I would highly recommend checking out some of the GDC talks I've linked to in the description about this particular sequence, as well as my existing discussion around the AI tools that were built to support it, because you can see the level of attention to care and detail that Naughty Dog have made, just to make sure that this feels like the narrative beat is being hit successfully, and there's an emotional payoff to a lot of this that is really quite satisfying, and it helps enrich the relationship between these two characters, even though the whole time this is actually an AI character that is just moving around this space, doing ultimately relatively simple things. He's moving around and he's playing animations, but it's all being put together in such a way that it feels authentic and it feels human at the end of the day. Except right now, because he's absolutely Blair Witching it into that wall. Yeah, I'm out of here. Thanks for watching this video here on AI in Games Plus. We're mixing it up a little here with something a little different from my regular videos, and that's why AI in Games Plus exists. So I hope you like it. What ideas do you have for further AI in Games Plus topics and videos? Let me know in the comments what you're thinking. Of course, if you want more of these videos, then you need to support AI in Games on Patreon or via YouTube memberships. Head to the links on screen and in the description, smash the buttons, subscribe to both channels, send your support my way, or you know what I'll do, I'll ask you very nicely at the end of the next video. You're getting off light for now.